Okay, we're back. So I was kind of joking when I said we were going to make a JavaScript app that talks to blob storage, but then we thought, well, that's actually not a bad thing, right? Like, we can use Azure AD authentication to talk to blobs, meaning if we were to build a client-side app that need to talk to blob storage as the user themselves, I mean, it should work, right? I mean,
exactly.
So let's do that. So let's get to our Azure portal. Let's create a blob account just for this, and Lord only knows what we're going to see in here. So again, I hope that none of my resource group names are offensive.
Make your font bigger or zoom in so people can see what we are doing.
See them internal.
Because I'm pretty sure not everyone has done blob storage before.
That's true. So okay, so blobs, right? So blob storage is our it's kind of like our RS3, right? It's Microsoft's place to store big blobs, big binary blobs of data. And our storage accounts, they have all sorts of modes. Like there's table storage for key value pair data. We've got blobs. You can upload disks like VHDs for your VMs, all sorts of fun stuff. So what we're going to do is I guess we'll talk to blob storage, right? We can talk to tables too. I don't think it would really matter because you can, although I don't know if we have the Azure AD permissions yet for blobs. So, and Thursday we're going to be taking a look at I am not myself's code. I was looking at it yesterday, and I know one way we could do it, but I don't like that way. So I don't want to do it that way. So I'm going to try.
So we're still looking into that, right? That's the whole point.
So I think so. We're going to try to get them to join us on Thursday, if I can figure out the best way to do it my way, not the way I think that we have to do it. Because I don't really want to do it the way I think we have to do it, which is to stand up an identity database, like an ASP.NET identity database, and then have a root user, and then add a bunch of extra identity providers to it. Because I don't really like that. I feel like there's got to be a way for us to grab that claims principle and do some stuff to it, but. I've looked at a couple different ways. I think the claims transformation way might be the best, but I don't know. If I can at least get to the point where I feel like there's a future for it, then we'll do it on Thursday. So, so for today, let's build a JavaScript app. Maybe not necessarily React, but probably React, I guess, because that's what people like to build in. Let's build a React app that talks to blob storage with Azure AD. So first, we need a blob account. Right? We need a storage account. Now, I don't know what subscription CM internal is, but it's not one that I pay for. So that seems like a really good place to put it.
I was going to say, charge your comrade here with all the charges that we're building. That's my subscription, but it's fine. Go ahead and do it. I'm giving you permission.
It's okay. I'll use mine.
As long as you don't spin up a Visual Studio, a VM scale set.
I mean,
with 1,000 VMs.
Clearly we should just go spin up a bunch of Kubernetes clusters to run our monolithic apps, right?
Distributed monolithic apps. Come on.
Yeah.
Get on with the terms.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I explained it to one of my buddies once. It's like, imagine, so we have at our house, at our old house, we don't live there anymore. It was our first house after we got married. And it had this enormous fountain in the front yard, which looked super out of place because it was a pretty normal sort of middle class neighborhood. And here's this giant gaudy fountain out in front of the house, right? Big concrete thing. It was awful. I mean, it was just so over the top, right? And in fact, we had a security system salesperson come by, and this he's an older dude. He was hard. He was like, "Oh, you really got to get signed up," and he was really aggressive. We didn't like him at all. And finally, one day we told him, "Look, dude, just don't come back. Please don't come back." And I'm not saying that he did it, but the next morning that fountain was over on its side. and it probably weighed like 300 pounds. And the thing is, for the remaining 8 years that we lived there, it never fell over on its own. So I'm pretty sure he knocked it over. Anyway, but so if I took that fountain, which worked, right, and I took a ball bat to it and turned it into lots of individual pieces, right, I now have my fountain is now a collection of microservices, right? In the sense that it still,
I love how you put it.
It still resembles a fountain, but functionally it doesn't work as a fountain unless we go and glue all the pieces back together, right? So if I wanted to have 48 things that all made the fountain work, I'd have to build that into my design in the first place and sort of rebuild it from the ground up. I can't say with any of the customers I've worked with that trying to take an existing monolith and turning it into a service-based app, especially a microservice-based one, without a ton of forethought and sort of what's the word I'm thinking of? Without a ton of design work up front, really doesn't work very well. Okay,
it's definitely challenging, especially for the older software. There's a lot of coupling, and it was never written to work as individual pieces, so it requires a lot of upfront work. I'm with you there.
I'm also kind of the opinion that if you write software correctly up front, redoing it for microservices later isn't necessarily that hard.
True.
If you think of I almost think of it as like concentric rings, right? And at the outermost ring, that's where you're building in the hooks for your host, for whatever your host is, be it a container or a function or a Lambda or whatever. And that if they're correctly abstracted down the pipe, all the way to the sort of the core business logic. I mean, you can kind of take it wherever, right? You can scale as you need to. It just requires a lot more work up front. Anyway.
True.
All right.
True.
Let's get our blob account created. So I'm going to create an Azure blob account because that's what.
So you're creating an Azure Storage account, not a blob account yet. It's an Azure Storage account that contains blobs, or can contain blobs and queues and tables.
That's true. You're right.
And files.
You're right.
So there you go.
So let's see. There we go. Imsal.js to blob. Let's create a new storage account. And that storage account, let's call it, I'll just put my initials at the front, Imsal.js to blob. Cool. We're just doing East US, seeing as that's where I live and that's where it will be running. A standard performance is fine for this. Storage v2 is fine. We could do blob only, but we'll do a locally redundant blob. So that gives us 3 copies in one data center or in one region, right? So in East US, I'll get 3 copies of the data, and we'll do hot because
super hot.
Because we don't need it to be super fast. So for now,
do you think they use tape for the cool stuff? I wonder.
I mean, is it? 15 hours to get your data back from archive?
Yeah.
I mean, I think tape is still like the most. It has the highest storage density per square inch or square foot or whatever. So I mean, maybe they do. I don't know.
Or zip drives.
I did see this.
Remember those?
Oh god. Well, yeah, but then it's like write only media. Right? Write only memory.
Oh, God.
Write once, read nonce. So I did see where somebody was working on storing data, almost etched in glass. It was fascinating. And they could store a ton, just an absolute ton of data on just a little tiny square.
I think Microsoft announced glass storage at some point. We said we were working on that as part of our research.
Yeah, it may have been where I saw it. But all right, so we're gonna do a public endpoint for obvious reasons, seeing as this is gonna run on my machine and on anybody else's machine who decides to go and run it. So we'll do a public endpoint for the storage account. Soft delete, nah. File share soft delete, nah, we don't need that either.
It's called Project Silica, my friend. We do have a project for it.
Very nice.
And it as a test, we stored a whole movie into glass, etched in glass.
Nice.
The Superman movie. Very
cool.
So you remember well, and I remember well.
So we'll just leave. Let's move this. Let's bump this to version 1.2 for TLS, but everything else I think we can leave for now. Secure transfer required. So this is like an HTTPS only. Public access to blobs. Yep. We're not going to be using files or data lake stores, so don't worry about that. All right, so let's get our storage account created. And now I've got to go create a React app, which last time I created a React app required 14 gigs of packages. Uh-oh, something's wrong with the thing here. Apparently I saw there's a little bug that if you if you use WSL2,
Mm-hmm.
but you use you have your disk in a different place, like if you have the backing VHD for it in a different place. If you're on an insider build, whenever you get an update, it loses its permissions.
Ruins everything.
Well, it loses its permissions. You have to start over. So.
Fantastic.
Okay. So, because I guess we'll do this in my Linux file system, because otherwise crossing WSL2 to Windows is going to take forever, right? So.
And your VS Code is able to work with your WSL? Have you tested that yet?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Nice.
So let's see. Create React app. Do I not have this installed? Oh, I don't. Okay. Is it npx create React app? There it is. So I guess we'll call this msal.js to blob. And let's see, what were the other? Oh, TypeScript. That's the thing we need. msal.js to blob TypeScript. Let me see what else we need to make sure put in here. Create
Azure AD.
Yeah, I wish there was a flag for. So we want to use TypeScript.
Yep.
Let's see here. And I mean, I guess you can do React on your own without doing create React app. But at least for me, as someone who is not doing a ton of front end work, for me, this was the fastest way for me to get going with React.
Yep, it's a great what's it called? Man, my day-to-day is not gonna be good. What's it? Scaffolding. It scaffolds a lot of stuff for you. There you go.
All right, so we will call that, and so it is template. That's the flag. Template TypeScript. Is there anything else that we need?
I think we're good at this point.
I think that's all we need. All right.
You also need. So how are you going to communicate from your React app to your blob storage? What are the components there that make the magic happen? Obviously, we don't want to use the storage account keys, right?
Sorry. No, that's right.
We don't want.
That's right. We don't want to. And it looks like. Oh, come on now. It says it's trying to use the interpreter from my machine, not the one that's installed in WSL. Let's see. Looks like.
Mr. Yeah, go on.
Do I not even have it on my box? Apparently not. All right. Well.
Set it up. So today we're setting up JP's machine to be able to work with React and Node.
I feel like I've done this 50 times, but I mean, whatever. To each their own. So, let's see.
Some will say code spaces, or some will say VMs where they have everything pre-installed. These are also options.
Well, let me talk about code spaces for a minute, because as much as I'd like to use code spaces, I cannot.
Yes.
Because I guess there's a little bit of a bug in the tenant selection for code spaces, so I can't create a code space through the code spaces portal, which is pretty unfortunate.
That's awful. Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh well. So it is what it is. I can't. Can only work with what I've got, right? So I have.
True.
Do I have NVM on here? No. Okay.
Setting it up. It's fine.
Always something. All right.
In the meantime, John Gallant, I think that's from the Azure SDKs team, all sitting on nails and looking forward to see if we come across any issues with the latest Azure SDKs for React and Node and Azure Storage.
Cool.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to take a bash command from the internet and run it without reading it, but
well, you found on the internet, it should be safe.
Well, it's from the NVM repo, so I'm kind of feeling like it's okay. So, all right, I'll just do a new one here. It'll be easier. Let's see if we have NVM now. No, we don't. See, I think it almost feels like there's some sort of a conflict between between what I've got locally and what I've got in my Windows installation.
Ah, right.
So I wonder if I think there's a way to ignore in WSL2 to ignore the Windows path. WSL ignore Windows path.
Also, your Node.js doesn't know which one to use when you run Node. Is that a problem?
Well, it looks like it's not even using the one that's local. It's using ones that are in my program files folders, which of course are in the Windows file system, which obviously we don't want.
Yep.
I guess the other alternative would be to just not use WSL and just use Windows.
That's also an option.
So let's go try that instead, just so that we don't have to sit around and deal with this.
And then you can set up your, and maybe we do another stream, set up your environment for WSL2 and Node.
Okay, this is going to work. So npx create React app. We'll call this msal.js to blob. Template TypeScript. Okay. I guess since this is Windows to Windows, it should still be pretty fast, so that's good. All right. And we don't have to use Visual Studio Code with the TypeScript or with the WSL2 or with the WSL plugin. We just use it directly on Windows, which is even better.
Yes.
And we don't have to worry about like extensions being installed and whatever in both of the environments. So that's good.
There you go. Just pasted the link to the Azure SDKs for JavaScript. If people are wondering how we're building this one. I think we need to have some kind of an iterative kind of a, hey, this is what we're building today, so people that join the stream later have an idea of what we're doing.
Yeah, we gotta figure this. We gotta figure out like graphics and stuff for Twitch, so it says,
it's coming. It's coming, right?
Yeah, so people can see what we're building, and we can like make cool stuff happen, like on everybody else's.
Like all the cool kids, they use bots and tools. We need to get these as well.
But I mean, at the same time, like like Simon said, we're doing identity and security. Maybe it's just not that exciting anyway.
Or maybe the graphics will make it more exciting. You never know.
That's true. Okay.
Never know.
All right. So let's get code up, and we have a billion files. Oh, that's not the right folder anyway. msal.js to blob. Okay. Let's get this going here. Go close the other 19 Visual Studio codes we got going on down here. All right. Oops. And get this one zoomed in a bit.
I would say a bit, quite a bit, because I've got all dies.
Yeah. All right. I feel like that's pretty big, don't you? Is that big?
That is decent. I think that's good. Yeah.
I don't want to make it too big because our
Code
faces are going to be covering it up on the side. Maybe our faces should be smaller. I made them bigger for the sake of our.
No, I like it. I like it.
Okay.
Me liking. Let's see how the code looks, and then we decide on resizing or not.
Okay. All right. So let's go look at our app.ts. In theory, if we run this, it should just work right now, right? So let's do an npm start here and see what we get. We should just get what is it, like the little spinning React logo or whatever. All right. Starting up. Should be relatively fast too because it's not crossing the Windows barrier, which is always a good thing.
Boundaries, yeah.
And I'll use this profile for today. All right, so let's go to localhost 3000. See what we get. All right, cool. There's our thing. There's our app. Right. So the first thing we need to do is we got to get msal integrated, right? And
well, so should we look into the Azure SDKs for identity and blob, or do you want to go down the MSAL route? Because there are two options now, and I think the Azure Identity has been designed to simplify the process. What do you think? Decisions.
What client libraries do we have for? Let's see, Azure Blob.
I've put them on the chat, but I can put them somewhere else. So if you, the easiest way to get there is if you search for Azure Downloads, then it takes you to the Azure SDKs page, and then from there you can click on the link to take you to the language-specific ones, and these are all the latest ones, so the V2 stuff, or maybe V3 these days. Like we've done a few iterations on the SDKs. Unfortunately, I know.
So is this?
But hopefully, that's the one.
So are these
Yeah.
these SDKs for managing them or SDKs for interacting with them?
No, these are the data plane SDKs. These are for interacting with blob storage. In fact, you can look at the docs as well to see how to use them and what you need for them. Yeah, so these are not the management SDKs.
Okay, cool. All right, so okay, that's cool. So let's look at getting started with this. So we need to install this one, which this is 12.1.2. So let's get this installed.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, maybe we don't have to use MSAL at all, right? At least not directly.
I think not directly, correct.
Although,
Uh-huh.
how are we going to get a user signed in, I wonder? I guess we'll encounter
Well,
that soon.
Oh, you mean like well, that would be, yeah, that's a good one. Let's see how the documentation works. Give me a second.
Okay, so let's see samples for creating the blob service client. So, authorize access to blobs and queues with Azure Active Directory from a client application. Okay. Oh, I guess yeah, we gotta go get our stuff set up now. And I just thought too. I don't know if we being you and I, are going to be able to consent to our app in. Well, we should be able to. Let's go all the way down and see. So let's go create a new app for the purposes of authenticating. So we're going to need to do that. So let's get over to our portal. We'll go to Active Directory. We're going to create a new app registration here for the purposes of representing our app. All right. So let's get a new one. We're going to call this, I'm just going to put my alias at the front to blob. All right. And accounts in our directory, that's fine. Redirect URI, don't need to worry about that yet. Get this registered. I should probably learn the CLI command for doing this because it'll be a lot faster.
Or the graph called, right?
Yeah, it's true. So let's add. We're going to be adding. See, now this is a curious question too. Are the Azure Identity SDKs up to date enough to use MSAL 2? Because in order to use MSAL
Yes.
2, we have to use single page app. Do you know which one it is?
That's a good question.
Azure Identity JavaScript. Let's see, MSAL. Let's see, what dependencies does this have? I see no MSAL in here, at least not up here. Is there another one down here?
So the way I think it works, it's the Azure Identity is using the Azure credential or the credential class to authenticate against, a credential object that authenticates against the blob storage. If you look at the docs, and it's very similar to what we do in .NET. So you can decide whether you're going to have a client certificate or a client secret or a managed identity. And then you pass them on to your blob storage client. and then that manages the authentication. So it doesn't do on behalf. It uses the app registration details to authenticate against, or the man's identity to authenticate against the blob storage.
Well, yeah, but have they re-implemented all the sign-in flows and everything else?
That's my guess.
So the Azure.
In fact, we'll have John Gallant coming very very soon to our stream to show us all these things. But
So we do reference MSAL from Azure.Identity. It is a dependency. However, I think it's the old MSAL. It is. It's 1.33. The new MSAL is called MSAL-browser. So this is reference. So this still uses implicit, for example. So this is using MSAL 133, which is fine. I mean, what it means though is when we register our app registration is going to have to be a web, and it's going to have to be implicit.
Right.
So let's see, localhost 3000. So that's our dev server. Implicit, we'll do access and ID because we need both. We get that configured. Okay, so we've got everything set up here. We don't need a secret for obvious reasons, and the only API permission I think we'll really need here is user.read. Although I'm trying to figure out exactly how we went about getting an access token. But we'll come back around to that. So back in our
the access token is fairly straightforward. If you're talking about storage, right?
Well, I'm talking about the permissions that we need in order to request a storage token. Like, do we need any of the Azure scopes? I don't think that we do, but
no, you don't need to. As long as the account that you use to get the credentials for has permissions to read into the storage. So if you were the one thing that I love, if you're using managed identities, means that if on your local machine you're using your own account, we now have Visual Studio Code credentials and Visual Studio credentials. So as long as you are logged in to these IDs with an account that has access to the resources that you need to speak to Azure, then the token object will populate accordingly, and then it will pass it to the storage client.
Okay. So we need to add our account to our MSAL.js to blob storage account. So go to our storage account under IAM. Here's where we can add a new role. And our role in this case is going to be storage blob. Are we going to be writing blobs or just reading them? You know what? We'll do owner.
Should we do read only for now?
We'll do owner.
What do you want?
We'll do owner for now. And I will I'll put myself, and I'll also put you.
There you go. So I can run it from my machine.
So now both of us have storage blob data owner permissions on our storage account, which is cool. So that's good. So we should have. So now we have the correct permissions. Let's go back to our app registration because we're going to need. We are going to need our. We're going to need our app IDs and stuff.
Yep.
Apparently the search isn't going to work. Where's the app that I just created? Literally just created it, and now I can't find it. There we go. MSAL.js to blob.
Sometimes it takes a couple of seconds for it to populate. I don't know why. That's why it's not coming up on the search.
All right, let's get some sticky notes.
Yes.
Create a new note here. And this will be our, let's see, our client ID. I'll go ahead and grab our tenant ID just in case we need it. Tenant ID. So we've got our client ID, we've got our tenant ID. And this is for MSAL.js to blob. Okay. So we've got our authentication configured. Right now it's just for localhost 3000. Our API permissions, the only one we have right now is user.read. And both of us are added as storage blob data owners to the app, right?
Yes.
So we have, did we just install storage blob? We did. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go take a look at how we use this. Okay. So the recommended way to instantiate a blob service client is to register a new Azure AD app, give permissions to access Azure Storage. Yep. Okay. Oh, we do have to add Azure Storage.
Oh, Microsoft APIs.
And what I'm probably now concerned about is whether or not we'll be able to consent to that. We'll come back around to it.
Oh, it's because yes.
So
let's find out.
Let's see. Azure Storage. There we go. User impersonation. It says admin consent isn't required, so let's hope that it's not. Access Azure Storage. Allow the application to access storage on behalf of the users. That's cool. Okay. Add those permissions. We can't grant admin consent, of course, because we are not administrators of corporate. So,
can you imagine though the amount of damage that we could do if we had admin permissions to our Active Directory?
I don't want that.
No, I don't want that responsibility.
Okay, so we've got our app. We've granted permissions, and then there's a sample app. Let's go look at that. Let's use that.
You go.
And then we have to configure our environment. So we can set environment variables.
Oh, no. We don't want to do that, though.
I certainly don't want to do that. Not in Windows.
Not just Windows. I think it's recommended that we don't do that as a standard practice. And because depending on how you create your credentials that you pass to the object, you have options these days. And we can look into those and why there are more appropriate ways of creating the credentials for your storage client. You haven't installed the Azure Identity library yet, have you? Or did it come down as a dependency to the blob storage?
It's a dependency on blob storage. So.
Sweet.
So we're not using storage shared key credential. We're not going to use a SAS token. So
nope.
So this is why I'm a little nervous. Because this looks like it's all just going to be magic.
Mm-hmm. But it is magic.
Well, you say that, but
MSI is magic.
But it's not MSI. It's just me accessing a storage account. It's not MSI at all.
So if you go to the Azure Identity documentation, because I recently did it, like I did it on Sunday. I had to work on that for .NET Core for my talk this morning with Sydney. So I was up at 2 a.m. doing a demo. In the Azure Identity docs, you'll see that we have token credentials that are various options. Yeah, it's not always straightforward to find it from there. Oh, there you go. Azure Identity Client for JavaScript. I'm a few seconds behind you, by the way. So if you scroll down a little bit.
Yeah, so there are credentials. There are different credential classes. So default Azure credential uses a service principal or a managed identity, which for what we're doing, we don't really want either. What we want is an interactive browser credential.
That one, yeah. Or you can also use, I see they don't have, interesting, they don't have the chain token credentials they have in .NET, where you say, I want to pass multiple, there you go. There's a chaining credentials below. So if you say credentials can be chained and tried in turn until one succeeds.
That's true, but at the same time, we don't need it anyway, right?
You don't need it now when you're running locally, but when you go to production. I mean, if you're doing interactive, you're absolutely right. You don't need it. That's a very good point. But let's say you were creating a service that needs to run without user interaction. Then at that point, you might want to say, when I'm developing locally, I want to use my, say, Visual Studio credentials. But when I run in production, I want to use my MSI. And that makes the whole chaining work beautifully.
Visual Studio authentication. You're so optimistic. Especially for somebody who is up at 2 a.m.
Hey, in .NET Core, we did have the appropriate credential classes. So there you go.
So we're going to use an interactive browser credential because we're just building a front-end app for somebody to go look at their storage account, right?
Exactly.
So
Yep.
we're going to use an interactive browser credential. So let's go look at add Azure Storage. We did that. We're not going to have a client secret in our case because we're JavaScript. So we're all going to be implicit.
Yep.
And then, let's see. I don't want .NET. Oh, this is the right place anyway. I was looking at the wrong place. So.
All looks the same to you, right? .NET, JavaScript. That's the difference.
So we need a blob store. We need a blob service client, right?
Yep.
And this is, it says environment setup for the sample, although I haven't seen the sample yet, but this is almost, this looks like it's implying that we need to set these, but I don't think that we do because we're not using a default credential anyway, because the default credential is assuming service principal, or be
yes,
it service,
that's exactly.
local service principal or MSI. So we don't need a default Azure credential anyway.
Correct. So all you need is an interactive credential, and then you pass it into the blob storage or the blob service client.
Yep.
And I think that should trigger the whole flow.
Yeah. So, what are we going to do once we connect to it? Just like show the blobs maybe, or?
Yeah, we might want to create a container with a couple of blobs just to list them.
That's true, yeah.
And then we can add more permissions to see if we can create stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about things I am not. Okay. One of those things.
Sure.
One of those things is a is a UI designer.
True.
So it's probably going to be pretty ugly, but I think that's okay because we're concerned more with how do we connect and do this rather than how pretty it looks. So I'm going to create a folder in here. I guess we'll call it components. And in here, I'll do a new file. We'll call this, I don't know, blob view.tsx. And our blob view will be, I guess, really just a list of blobs, right? This will be
correct.
This will handle all of the blobbing, as it were, right? So let's see, import.
I like that, all of the blobbing. That's a new term. We should trademark that.
So React from React. Oops. I should probably start from another file, but whatever. So we need, for our blobs, we need to import our, I'm just going to put this over here on the side so we can look at it here. I'll put this here that way. So we need our interactive, what was it called? The interactive token credential? That's what,
interactive browser credential?
I think it was interactive browser credential. Browser credential.
I like how you don't look in the docs, you just go, I'll guess it. Eventually, I will come up with the right name.
From Azure.Identity. All right. Oh, sorry, that's not correct. It's Azure WAC Identity. What is this telling me?
Have you done the require yet? You need to do the require first.
I don't think I have to do that here. I don't think I have to do that in React. I think this import is the equivalent.
Okay.
So what is it called?
Is it Azure /identity? Oh, that's the one you have over there, right?
Okay. That's what I had.
Do you need to put a NAT in front of it?
Pull up my other stuff here. No, I shouldn't have to. It should just be Azure WAC Identity.
Huh.
That's weird. Anyway, okay. And then let's see.
Can you make the font slightly bigger, please?
Yep. So we're going to create this class called blob view, and that is a React component. And I've got some other React I've written before, so I don't have to completely remember all this from scratch. And I guess for now we're just going to do all this in this file. So may not. I guess we need to, let's see. What are we going to have? I'll start down here. What do we want it to look like? I guess we'll just go
table.
I guess we're just going to go grab some. So we're going to do a table. And let's see, let's do our header. And in here we'll have, let's see. Let's see, blob name. We'll have, oh wait, these are THs, aren't they?
Yeah.
And it needs to be inside of a TR. It's been a while since I did some tables.
It's been a, yeah. If you only have a canonical one, you also need to have, yeah, TH and TR, otherwise complaints about
Let's go open Storage Explorer and see. Let's see what kind of properties do we have for this. We have our blob name. We have like blob size, maybe. We could do like container name, or maybe not container name. Let's do like URL to download, or download URL. So we got Storage Explorer loading. Probably have to sign into this 38 times. And, oh, maybe not. And this one's called msal. Oh yeah, no, I gotta sign in again. Of course. Hopefully this doesn't take but a sec.
Mm-hmm.
Sign in. Find my phone. That's why I think it's easier to do demos with. See, it's like it thinks I'm part of a member of a tenant that I am not a member of. So we're just gonna have to hope that I can still access my subscriptions in here, and we can. Okay, good.
Yep.
So that one that we just created was msal.js to blob. We have no container, so let's create a container first.
Yep.
And we'll just call this private, because it is going to be private. We're not going to have any open access on
That's
the
whole
internet.
point.
Yep. And I don't know, we'll just create a new folder called, we'll call this Christos's Headshot. And then I think I have a picture. I think I have a picture of you that I used for one reason or the other, which would be perfect for this. Let me see if I still got it. I hope I still do.
Well, if not, then we can grab some dog pictures from the web or animal pictures, good animals, and put them on our container.
Let's see.
Or cars, if people prefer cars. Although I think dogs or animals are more universal.
Oh no, I found it.
You found it. Damn it. I was so hoping that we could go with animals, but it's fine.
I took it. For some reason, we needed a picture of your face, and so I grabbed it from a Teams meeting we were in. You looked pretty annoyed about everything.
Also, I hate the fact that I'm looking in random places because my webcam is up there, but my screen is like. If almost we could find some technology that puts the webcam in the middle of the screen, so I don't look like I'm off looking somewhere there or over there, to the left or to the right, then that would be amazing. But up until this point, I had to look up and remind myself I need to look up straight into the camera.
Let's broaden it. Let's do Teams backgrounds. Next, I got a whole.
I'm not complaining about my image.
I got a whole.
I've come to terms with how I look.
I got a whole collection.
Nothing to change here.
I got a whole collection of them here, so we'll put a few of these in here. Okay. So there's one. There's one. There's another one. Oh, this is a great one. And the last one. Okay. So we got all these files uploaded, which I suppose we could have done this in our app, but I think it'll take us a while to get where we need to go. We've only got about an hour left anyway. So we've got our file list here. Maybe we grab the, grab like last modified. that'd probably be a good thing to pull off of it. We'll get the URL, a bunch of other properties that are available. Let's look at our properties. Which container they're in last modified, the MD5 of the content. Content link, that's the property I was thinking. So we'll use that for blob size. Okay.
Yep.
And then for our T body, we're gonna do. So we gotta have a little bit of data here. I guess we'll call this blobs we found. And I wonder if there are any types that come along with the blob that we can use for TypeScript.
There should be. I know in .NET we do have types. So the question will be if we have access to enums or properties like that. I hope we do. Because is it not the case that when you use the blob client, you get everything? Or do you get a container and then you decide whether it's a container or a directory or whatever, and then you can almost do an iteration of the code of the content. Say, well, if it's a directory, go and recursively look into the directory, or if it's a blob, read the blob and give me the properties.
Well, let's look at our blob type that's in our. Let's look at our blob type. See what we've got hanging off of that. So there's our blob service client. We need to pull that into import our blob service client from Azure Storage blob. There we go. Why do we not have Azure Identity, I wonder? I wonder if I have to add it as a development dependency. I would assume that's probably what it is. So this is Azure Identity. What is it? --dev maybe? I'll make this a dev dependency. So
we need some background music.
I know.
The awkward silence of npm installing stuff.
Well, yeah.
Which is coming too as well, along with our graphics.
We'll get there eventually. I think it's save dev. And because I would assume it gets pulled in by. I would assume npm pulls it in when we do a restore because it's a dependency for building a production one. Yeah, see, it's already there, so it's saying it can't. Saying we can't install it. That's what I don't get. Oh, I guess now it resolves. Okay, whatever.
Resolved now, yeah. I was going to say, I haven't seen your code, but it resolves.
Yep.
And we can see your, yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, so then the next question becomes, what other do we have a type for a blob? I guess we'll go find the docs.
We should.
Azure Storage blob.
To the docs.
I think there's probably a good way to look at it's probably a good way. The TypeScript will enumerate the types for us, but okay. Let's see. Public developer docs. Let's go over there and take a look.
I'm looking at the README file right now. Da-da-da.
Blob storage, okay. So we have a quick start for it.
Let's see. Account.
So that's in the container client for coming out of list blobs flat. And list blobs flat will return us what does that return us? What type does that return us?
I think that returns all the blobs and full paths. So we'll iterate the whole blob storage and we'll give you all the blobs under all the hierarchy of the tree of the directories, or directories in quotes, because containers are not technically directories, but you can almost read them. So you should be able to access them directly.
Yeah, but what's the type?
Type?
Because I'd rather just have a, what comes out of list blobs flat?
Yes.
Let's see. Well,
List of blobs inside a container. Let's see if it has any types. I'm just trying to see in the sample code whether they have a way to.
yeah, I don't see it anywhere, which is what I'm a little curious about. I don't see.
Types.
Yeah.
Blob storage samples.
Looks like we're gonna need a container client too, and
Yep.
I guess you know what? Let's just wire one up and see what we get out of it. That's probably gonna be
Correct.
easier than trying to find a non-existent doc. And maybe there's a command somewhere that'll explain or show us where it is. But
yeah.
Okay, so back to our client docs. So we need to. It's pretty simple, I guess. So our blob storage client is a new blob service client, and it is expecting a URL, and the URL of our account is just the name .blob.core.windows.net, which we can get right here out of storage. We get right here out of storage. Storage Explorer. We just need the URL here, so let's go grab that. We don't need the container name on there just yet. And then the credential for us is going to be, so this is looking for a credential, not a, what's it, interactive browser credential.
Yep.
Yep. And then looks like we're going to need to define some options in here, most likely our,
I think these are optionals. You don't have to provide, or maybe the interactive one requires the non-default options.
well, we're going to have to tell it our client ID and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
Which I guess per these docs it says stick them in your environment variables, which I suppose we could do, but it'd be much easier to just give it to them for right now.
Yes, for now, we'll give it to them, and then we can decide how to approach it.
So this is looking for interactive browser credential options. Okay. And here's where we can set, okay, good. Here's where we can set all of the things that we need in order to do that. So we'll create some new interactive browser credential options. Which we likely need to import from here. Interactive browser credential, browser credential options. There we go. Guess I need to define these elsewhere. All right, so let's just call this sign-in options for now. I guess I don't need to new one of these up, huh?
Nope.
So our authority is going to be, actually this is authority host. Authority host should be login.microsoftonline.com/our tenant, which in our case is Microsoft.com. Our client ID, we've got that from our sticky notes. Okay, so we've got our client ID. We are not going to have a client secret this time around. Let's see here. We can choose redirect or pop-up. Pop-up's the default. We'll keep that for now. Post log out redirect, we don't need to worry about that. Proxy options, we shouldn't have to worry about those. Redirect URI. We do need the redirect URI. Oh, it's got a default of window location href, so that's perfect. So that's good. Retry. Tenant ID, we'll give it our tenant ID.
Interesting how it's optional.
I think if it's optional, it probably uses common, would be my guess.
Yeah.
But we're going to use our tenanted endpoint because this is not a multi-tenant application. So we're going to use that. All right, let's get our tenant ID. Okay. And interestingly, authority host is optional too. The default is logging at microsoftonline.com. So let's just, we can just get rid of that too. We don't even need that.
Yep.
So all we really need, since we're talking to Azure AD, is a client ID and a tenant ID is what it looks like, at least for the moment, because since this is the storage library, I would assume the storage library is what, well, no, we're not setting our scope here though.
Yeah, we're not.
But you know what? We're handing this credential object to the blob client. So we're likely not going through a logon immediately. We're going through I lost looks like we lost Christos. Not a good thing. Maybe he'll call back if we're lucky. All right, let's see what's going on here. New blob service client, and we have our new token, our new interactive browser credential, and that needs to take our sign-in options, okay? Not sure what happened. We lost you there for a sec.
Or maybe you use some kind of a magic key combination and you
I hope not.
terminated my Skype connection.
I thought I turned those off.
You never know.
You know what? Let me make sure, because maybe you're right. Maybe I did it on my other machine.
For a moment, I was speaking to myself. Like, you're not doing it right.
Okay, global hotkeys are off. So let me make sure the control ED to format this document doesn't hang up on you. I can go to doesn't. I think we had that. I think that was the problem we had before. So, okay, so we've got our blob client created. We've got our sign-in options, which you need for our interactive browser credential. We've got our blob storage client connected or created. Yep. So the next thing, in fact, and I wonder if this exists for the blob client. This set of static docs here. It does. Okay, good. So blob. I don't know why they're not on docs, but whatever.
Yes. I think we have MS Docs, but I think they point back to here.
Well, this seems to be almost like, this is like Java doc, right? Like these are like almost like the auto-generated ones.
Right, yeah. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we're doing these days with the SDKs are auto-generated because we can't do it fast enough. So many languages, so many SDKs.
Okay, so... Oh, we do have to go set course rules. I forgot about that. That's one thing we have to go back and do. We'll come back.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So let's see. What is the... We're going to use a container client. And the container client has a list blobs flat. Here we go. This is going to be a paged async iterable iterator over a blob item. So blob item is what we will use as our
return object.
That's our type that we're going to use. So blobs we found, we'll call those blob items,
Mm-hmm.
an array of them. Oh, there we go. So add that up, and then let's see. We need a constructor. I guess I just do a new array, maybe. Oops, or empty array.
Empty array.
Okay. All right. So we've got our blob storage client. So now what we want our blob storage client to do. Oops. Blob storage client. From here, we want to get a container client for a specific container. And I believe the name of our container was private. That's right. Okay.
So what if I don't know my containers? So what if I have a storage account, but I don't know which container I need to be looking at? Probably not the best practice, but I've come across this one before where I had to iterate through all the contents of the storage. Maybe that's something we can look at later, but for now, let's start with a known container.
Well, so we have list containers. So
Yep.
there is a list container method here, so we could get all the containers. We know what our container name is though for the moment, so we'll get our container client, and our container client, I believe, has list blobs. So we have list blobs by hierarchy. And we have list blobs flat. And I think for the moment we'll do list blobs flat. Okay.
Let's flatten the hierarchy.
And
How about that?
Okay. Oh, good. We've even got a sample. So while we await on listing the blobs, this is just doing a console log. Okay, cool. So we want to, really, we just want that whole list of them, right? Like, really, we're just going to take that whole list and we're just going to set
dump them onto the page.
We found equal to await container client. Although, can we do an await in our component did mount? I don't know if we can. Can we have an asynchronous component did mount?
I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't either.
Let me Google for it or Bing for it.
Okay, this dot. All right.
Async component React. There's a doc. React async for data fetching. There you go. Creating an async component using fetch. The use fetch. Right. Okay. I think that is a library or the use fetch hook.
Well, and we need to actually get the blobs out of this, right? So, let's see. I guess we could iterate through it. I wish that we could iterate. Well, let's look at what our code is for this. So we have our container client, list blobs flat. So we can
returns an async iterable iterator.
Yeah, so we have to iterate it in order to fill it. So let's just push those into our array. So for await, we'll just use this. I mean, that's pretty much exactly what we need to do, right?
Yeah.
Blob of container client list blobs flat. And we will just push that into our blob. We'll push our blob into that. Okay. Now, I have very little confidence that that's actually going to work, but we might be surprised. So, in our body, we're going to do, let's see, blobs we found. I guess what was it, like a map? I guess we'll do a map here and get some table rows out of that thing. So we're gonna essentially map our our blob list over to our to some table rows.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think we need to be interacting with a state object, but that's okay.
Let's find out what happens when we do this one, and then, you know.
We give each one a unique key. And then we have our TD, and our first TD is our blob name.
Yep.
Which is, what's our type that we get out of this? What's our blob item? Let's go look at that. Our blob item has a name. So we'll do x.name. Okay.
Yep.
Oops. We have a, what else do we want to get off of it? The size, which I think the size is probably under properties, blob properties. Ah, here we go. And here we have content length. So
There you go. Everything you need.
Blob properties, or sorry, I think the property name is actually just properties. There we go. Content length. Okay. Okay. And then the last one would be our download URI if we wanted to actually download this file.
Correct. This is
And
probably
actually,
one of the most common properties, right?
Well, since these are all images, maybe we should just include maybe we should just download the image. We'll wait a second.
See, I like the way you think. Almost create a grid of images.
Yeah, there we go. Do we have a sort of proper URL, or is that going to show up as the name anyway? Let's see here. Least copies, access tier. I don't see one, but I think that's probably okay. We'll come back to that one. Let's just see if we have let's see if we have our pieces.
Sure.
All right, and I'm fairly certain we're going to have to set state. So let's just go ahead and do that now instead of doing it later. So we need our state here. Let me go back to my other code to make sure syntactically I'm doing it correctly.
Yep.
So we have our state, and the only state that we're going to have is our blobs we found, which is a blob item. And then in our constructor, we will set that to, and here in our component, we're going to need state. I guess it's any and then state, because the first one are the props, and then we have the state. And then in our constructor, we're going to have, let's see. I'm not sure how we access those now. We're not. See, this is the thing that always gets me is I never remember how to do this when I don't have any props I'm sending in, which may be because I'm not using React correctly.
Yeah. The fact that we're not doing React on a day-by-day basis, it presents challenges when it comes to working with it.
Let's see, but how then when I'm doing TypeScript, how do we make the signature? How do we make the signature work? You know. Let me see. I'll look at some other older code here. maybe I can find what I need. Oh, maybe we just do state. We don't worry about the other. So the state is the state. And then we do a super on this one with the state. There we go. Now all our squigglies are gone. And then our state itself is just set to blobs we found as an empty array. So that's our state. It's a blob item array. Extend a React component with state. And we got state there. Yep, yep. Oh. There we go. And then oh, sorry, just the wrong syntax. Of course. Okay. So then we actually want to access that. We want to push data to that state. We have to do a set state on it, which is different, a little bit different than just a push. So instead here, we'll do I guess we could do a local one, or we could set the state on our, let's see, blobs we found. So we have to set it to the whole thing. So instead, let's do a local blob list, which is an array. We'll do a local blob list push, and then at the end, we will set our state. I'm sure there's a better way to do that, but so then our state is our blobs that we found. Our local blob list. Okay. All right. So then in our code down here, we're going to go get blobs we found out of the state. There we go, and map them from there. Okay. And then I guess we need like a return on this. I'm missing something here. Oops. Christos, you still with me?
I'm still here, alive, and following your code.
Okay, just want to
Lead
sure.
the way. No, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Well, I had to control ED a few times. Okay. So,
Seems like we're almost there. What's missing? Should we run and see how it works, or if it fails, or anything else?
yeah, we got to add it to our main app page. But okay, so we've got our interactive browser credential, which we have configured. So that uses our client ID and our tenant ID. We've got our blob storage client, which is using the interactive browser credential.
Perfect.
We're going and getting our client, and then we're just listing some blobs and pushing them to an array, and then setting the state. So, I mean, in theory, we should be okay. So let's go add this component to our main page here. So we don't don't really need the logo. I don't know if we really need any of this, to be honest. Let's get rid of the header. We'll just have a div in the middle. And then here we've got blob view. And
stick it in the main page. That's how we do design these days.
Blob view. There we go. So we've got blob view imported. Wonder why it still says it can't find that. Oh, that's right, because I have to explicitly say what I want to import. Okay. Although now it says blobs we found is missing in type, but required in type, read-only state. I don't need to pass the state in. I mean, maybe I don't even need the state here.
Oh, I got you.
Well, but because why would I pass the state of this in? I know you pass in like props. That's the way that you pass data down to one. But I don't know why you would pass the state.
Okay. Now it's complaining about the state on the super. So the base class expects it, right?
Well, because it's out of the constructor here. But if I take the super call out,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to do this. But if I, so the super is expecting at least one. Oops. So this is where I start to get confused about exactly how we're interacting with this. So let's see, default, blah blah blah. So we have.
Are you browsing right now for the answers?
I am. Although I'm not. I'm not sure. Let's see. Yeah, props get passed to the component, like a function parameter, whereas state is managed within the component, similar to variables declared within a function. So maybe my signature is incorrect, although I think... Maybe it's not possible to have a component without props.
And what kind of props are we going to be passing? Because I don't think we have any props to pass. Is that correct?
We're not passing anything to it.
So do you need to have state there? Because I wonder if we can create a component without really any state.
Well, we need the state because the state is where we're going to store the changes that we make within the component.
Right.
So we need the state, but we're not going to send the class. We're not going to send the state in, right? Which I think is what the signature is saying. Because it's looking for it in the constructor, but I don't actually need it in the constructor. Because if we were to create, like, let's say we did an interface props.
Yep.
I mean, there's nothing in there. So what are we going to send? Let's see. I mean, we're pretty much just passing it through at that point. I mean, there's nothing there. It's empty. Of course, now it works. Maybe we have to have it just by virtue of. I wonder if we have to have props sent.
Right.
I don't know how. Well, okay, whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay, we'll come back around and figure that part out. So let's run this and see what we get. Let's see. We'll do an npm start, and this was on HTTP localhost, right? I'm almost certain it was local. It was HTTP, not HTTPS.
Correct.
Okay, let's see what we get. localhost 3000. Starting the development server. Oh, cannot resolve Azure Identity and decode. Oh, interesting. I wonder what happened there.
Ah.
But now it says it's compiling again, so I'm not sure what it's doing. Can't resolve Azure Identity and decode. Okay.
Interesting. So the ID is not complaining about it, but we cannot compile.
All right. Let's go look at our file and see. So we don't have it as a dependency anywhere. Maybe since we're referencing it directly, that's why we would need to.
Well, add it as dependency.
Identity, and then let's see, what's our current version on this?
Let me find it super quickly. Oh, I've left the page.
That's fine, I've got it up here. 1.0.3.
And that's not the preview one, right? So that's the RTM.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay. Do this again. Although I probably need to do an npmi there, but I also need to figure out if that's a development dependency or. So I guess since I'm thinking since we're referencing it directly, maybe it's not. Okay. So localhost 3000. So we're there. Oops. I guess we better go look in our. Oh, still can't resolve. Yeah, I guess we can do an npmi.
Bring in npm install, download half the internet.
Sounds like my kids are home.
Sounds like it. Mine are still swimming somewhere in the lake, and they're extremely delighted after this fiasco.
Well, it's lunchtime here, so I'm sure they're going.
They came back for the food.
Error opening pop-up window. That's right. So I remember reading a bunch about this before. So in order for a pop-up window to happen, you need to have, I guess in later versions of Chrome, in order for a pop-up to not get blocked, it has to be as like a direct result of a user's action, like a user clicking a button.
Oh, right.
And I think for us, the reason why that's not happening for us is because, of course, we're trying to do this immediately as soon as we hit the page. And so you see up here, pop-ups were blocked. So for the moment, I'm going to allow it to come through and we'll go back and fix it.
Yeah, something like get blobs or something, right? Where you initiate the action.
All right, so permissions requested.
There you go.
View your basic profile.
Hey, I missed a step there. How did you allow the pop-up to work? Did the Chrome block it and then you had to unblock it, or did you do something else?
Yeah, no, there's a little button that pops up in your URL.
Right.
To say, hey, you need to view Okay,
nice.
So interesting, I don't see the storage scopes here. Now, This might be because if we look at the scopes, the only thing we're asking for is an ID token and for OpenID and profile, so I guess that's why it's not asking for it. Maybe we'll ask for it again here in a moment. So, okay, we're going to accept this. Okay. Now it's popping back up again. And, yep, there you go. And so needs admin approval.
Oh, come on.
So that's very much that is a Microsoft behavior, not an Azure AD behavior. So let's go create an app registration somewhere else, which also means we're gonna have to create a new create a storage account somewhere else too, which is pretty lame, but
yeah.
Okay, that's all right. I'll make it work. So
well, we know the problem, and we know that now that requires. Interesting how it did not present itself when we were asking for the permissions up front.
Well, that didn't have the right scope in there, so that would be why. We didn't have a resource, we didn't have a scope, so.
Right.
So now I'm in my private tenant. So here I can do what we need to do. I guess we'll just do a new resource group, storage msal blob, msal JS blob, and we'll call this msal JS blob. That's what I named the last one.
Yeah. So you'll probably get a conflict on the name because blob accounts or storage accounts are named uniquely globally.
Actually, I think it's okay. My name must have been a little bit different. Yeah, my name was a little bit different. So this is just msal.js blob. My old one was msal.js2 blob. So all right, all this looks fine. Fine. Let's make this TLS 1.2 next. Review. Let's get this created. Now, while this is creating, we got to go do Active Directory. We've got to go create a new app registration in the other tenant. Of course. So let's go create a new app registration. Msal JS2 blob. Account to my directory. Localhost 3000. We need to add some API permissions, notably storage, which is right here. User impersonation, add, cool, that's done. I'm just going to go ahead and grant admin consent, even though it's not required, just so that just so we don't have to deal with it. So we've got consent, which by granting admin consent, we are in an unconfigured or in a defaultly, I guess, a standardly configured tenant like mine, granting admin consent for non-admin consent required permissions doesn't really matter. It doesn't really do anything because I wouldn't need admin consent to do these either. But if you have certain policies that would prevent it, that would prevent it, like in our corporate tenant where I can't consent to my user impersonation for Azure Storage, for example.
Yeah,
that's because of a setting that our IT department is set in to do that, in which case if they granted admin consent, then I would be able to use that. So if you have just a normal off-the-shelf tenant or a dev tenant that you've gotten, granting admin consent for non-admin consent required permissions
doesn't do much.
Doesn't really do anything. It's primarily only when you do the other one. So
right.
Okay, so we've got this configured. We need our new client ID and our new clients and our new tenant ID. So there's our client ID. Put that in here.
Yep.
Here is our directory ID. We'll get that here. All right, save that up. Let's get these other windows closed and let's get to a browser profile that will work. Oh, we already got one up. Even better. Let's get this one over here. All right, localhost 3000. Pop-up blocked, we got to fix that.
Yeah.
So pop-up blocked, loaded up. I got signed in, and ID token is not enabled for the app. So we got to go turn on. We need to go turn on implicit
float
for ID and for access. Even though the first one is just an ID token, the second one's going to be for blob. So let's get that turned on. I'm signed in.
Dun, dun, dun.
Something's happened. I don't know what. Okay. Let's go look at our console.
I would say probably not an authentication error, but more likely something in our React code. That error list is, there you go. Nice.
Token calls are blocked in hidden iframes. We didn't set a CORS policy on our, we didn't set
options.
CORS policy on our blob storage account. We got to do that.
Oh, right.
All right. So this is our, let's get back to our storage account.
Can I say how much I hate CORS? Dude, if there's one thing I'm not happy with is having to deal with CORS. Caught up so many times by it and screwed up stuff where I was working on solutions. I mean, there is a reason why it's there, and you should definitely have it switched on rather than switch off and be done with it. But at the same time, back in the old days of .NET 4, and MVC and web APIs, it was tricky to get it right. Like I remember I was fiddling with the web configs for hours and then trying to get it to work. So yeah, bitter experience with cores.
I think I need the full origin in here. HTTP. Okay, so in blob accounts, you have the option to set cores rules. We're setting our allowed origin as localhost 3000 because that's where our dev server is running. You could just make this an asterisk and make it star, which if you're, if it's code somebody else is downloading or something that still needs to access your resources, maybe that would be okay. But typically, you want to keep this list to whatever.
Yeah, you want to keep it locked down.
To whatever wherever you're going to be hosting your app. Okay, so authorization permission mismatch. This request is not authorized to perform this operation using this permission. So that's good. So this way we've gotten past the cores error. Now we need to figure out why our app isn't working, and it's because we don't have a role assignment in here.
Yes,
So
that
storage,
account.
That's right. So even though I'm a global admin or an administrator of my Azure subscription, it's not there by default.
Yes.
And then let's see. Let me add. Let's see who else do I need?
Interesting. Your account is not automatically assigned a role there?
It is not.
Huh.
Which is
great.
That
changed? Because it's great, but at the same time, existing storage accounts I have on my other tenant, I thought always had it.
Nope, they do not.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so that's gonna probably take a second for that role assignment to come up. In fact, we may need to go get a fresh token. So let's clear let's get our stuff cleared here, all of our site data. Let's give that a refresh. Got signed in. Authorization permission mismatch. Request is not authorized. Okay.
Still?
So let's go see. So there's a 200. It made to list the containers. And then we got a 403. This request is not authorized to perform this operation using this permission. So
API permissions on our app registration, maybe?
Well, we have we have an access token. I'm going to go look at it.
But does it have the right permissions?
Yeah, that's what we're going to go look. Even though you're not supposed to mess with access tokens on your own.
How many times have you said this on the stream and offline? But it's good to be able to look at the access tokens and see what's happening, right?
Yeah, so it has
permissions.
So it has the correct audience, which is storage.azure.com. It came from my issuer. It has the right scope, which is user impersonation. It has the tenant, it has the unique name. So I'm signing in with my tenant account. So it's all good. Wonder if it just has wonder if it's just a timing thing, So,
switch off, switch on, switch off, switch off, switch on.
Oh, container not found because we didn't add anything to our container. That's good though, because that means that our call is succeeding.
Yes.
So we're not getting a 403 or
So
401. Now we're getting a 404. So let's go back to Storage Explorer. I get over to that subscription.
Oh, yeah, because we didn't create that container in that subscription. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We forgot about that.
You kind of copy this container over.
Can you?
Oh yeah. Copy. Maybe I
don't think you did across. I don't think you can do it across subscriptions. I know you can do it across storage accounts, but I don't think you can cross boundaries. Prove me wrong.
No, you can because you can do a blob copy across now. So.
And it's using AZ copyright behind the scenes.
That's right. It is.
And it's super fast. I think it was part of the January release or October release of Azure Storage when I was working in marketing and I was managing the product. It was exciting to see that coming public.
There we go. All right, so let's go to this one. Blah, 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 blah. Where is it? msal.js blob containers. Create a new container called, oh wait, that's not the right one. Or is that one the right one? Oh yeah, it is. New blob container call. We'll call this private. Paste. I think that's gonna do it.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, there they are. Cool.
Damn. Love Azure Storage. Just for that.
All right, we refresh it. Cool. So we got our stuff in there. Let's refresh our app again. There we go. We got our blobs. No server.
Holy moly.
No server
Check
side.
that out.
Direct to storage. No storage keys. No nothing. Cool. So let's go fix our pop-up problem.
Two things. Let's fix the pop-up problem and let's stick some, I don't know, maybe some CSS over there to make it look nice. We might not be designers, but we can download packages and apply them.
X. Oh no. I should have turned it off. So what's interesting is I don't know if we have. Let's see what we have in our properties object. Properties. We had this up earlier. I guess I should stop doing a watch so it doesn't constantly go back and forth.
Update. Yeah.
So we have our content links, we had our name, we have our properties. I wonder if we can get that from the, I guess maybe the blob item doesn't have its full URL on there.
Well, that would be super weird.
Well, let's go look at our SDK here. So blob item. So we have metadata, which is our own metadata, like our own being the developer. And in blob properties, we have copy info, we have content type.
We got blob type.
Content info. Oh, what's blob type? Blob.
Remember
page.
how you were asking before?
It's block page or append blob.
Yeah.
So
Blob. There's no URL in there? That's insane.
I wonder if we have to get the container URL and then stuff them together. That would be my assumption. If we look at the container client, let's go back to the container client. Container client. I mean, in some ways we kind of gave it a name. So, yeah, URL. So if we
you do a container URL and you append the name of the blob, and that gives you access to the full URL, correct?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
So we could put it, I guess we could put it in our state item. We could have, let's see, container URL, and it's just a string. And here, we'll set our state to be container URL is container client dot URL. Easy enough. So here we'll just take. Oh, but we're just still mapping out of the blobs we found.
No,
that's
the
fine.
state.
Well, it's in the state. We'll just use the. Let's see, container.
Oh, this .state .container URL.
Plus x dot name, because I believe, and we can test this to make sure. I'm fairly certain that if we were to put the a folder in there, a folder really just becomes part of the name, right? It just becomes part of the name of the file. It's not actually stored like in a physical folder. The container is the physical container, and I guess it's the only thing that, like, the folder name, if you put a folder name, is really just a piece of metadata.
Exactly.
It's not actually part of the thing. So.
Well, we could test it to be doubly sure. In the 7 minutes that we have, I think we can run and do it.
Okay.
Race to the end.
All right, we'll create a new folder. Oh, I guess we had a folder called Teams Backgrounds in here originally anyway, didn't we? Teams
We did.
Background. Let's see, let's move those into our folder.
So you're copying, not moving.
Well, just, yeah, for the sake of simplicity, I guess.
Sure.
Here we go. So those are now in Teams background. We'll go delete them from here. Yeah, I'll get rid of them. Okay, Teams background. There we go. So we got all of our files in there now. We are in the wrong window. So let's get my other window back up here. Here's our React app. Already signed in. Cool. So yeah, that worked. So now we've got our download URL as the whole thing. Now the other interesting thing is I don't think this would just work, right? Because I think the way we would have to do it is we would have to go get the bytes
for the image.
For the image. Yep. So this is still coming from the other window. I need to go close that other window. It's going to drive me nuts. Get rid of that. Get rid of that.
Some cleanup.
Window cleanup.
Yeah, so we have our React app authenticating against Azure AD and getting the permissions to go and speak to storage. We had to move to a private tenant, not the Microsoft tenant, because it requires admin
Well, it doesn't.
permission.
It doesn't require admin, but
it's locked down for our tenants.
The way our tenant's configured is you need admin approval for almost any permission out of a very short list. So cool. So yeah, so we did get connected. We don't have any. What's cool is we don't have any secrets in our code here, right? We have a client ID and we have a tenant ID.
Exactly.
We don't have any. None of this is a secret. And it really wasn't that much code. I mean, it's five lines of actual code. I mean, we configure our browser credential. Then we go get a container client and list our blobs out. And I mean, that's it. So then I think the next thing, which we're not going to do today, maybe we can do it. Maybe we do it later, is to go and pull the bytes, or the alternative, instead of pulling the bytes, would be to generate a SAS token for them, for a SAS token that lasts 2 seconds. So
you can pull the information out.
Long enough to pull the information out, because, like, if I wanted to share the info with you, but you're not on the storage account, we can generate a SAS, and it's called a shared access signature, and that shared access signature is what lets us. It's like a time limited and operation limited URL.
Yeah.
To a specific blob or a specific container. So maybe it's read only for the next 10 seconds, which for our purposes, that would be sufficient, because it's going to, maybe 60 seconds if you're on a slow connection or whatever, but some number of seconds long enough to initiate the download.
So is the SAS token on the blob, on the container level, or the storage account level?
At any point.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
However, if we do it at, say, the blob storage, it should be enough. Let's say 10 seconds or 5 seconds should be enough to download the data. We just need to think that if you have a container with a lot of images and you apply the SAS at that point, and you think about how long is it going to take to download all the images. Imagine you have a store that has a gallery of products, and you want to make sure that these load on time. So that's a great solution. So rather than downloading everything up front as you iterate through the blob storage, you do it with a SAS access URLs. That's a good idea. I haven't thought about that. There you go.
So we worked with a customer a long time ago who was they were building like if we took one of these, and right now it's not going to work because there's no sort of context available for downloading that file. So, years ago, I worked with a customer who had a bunch of video data. They were like scouting recruits for a sports team, and they used a pattern like this where they would generate SAS tokens for uploading and downloading data directly to and from a blob account, both for people uploading the videos and for people sharing the videos, because the throughput on a blob storage account is super, super high. I think it's like 40 or 50 gigabits in total, and like I think you get 80 megabytes on a single blob, right? It's super fast,
Yeah.
and that's in standard, right? It's not even like in a premium offer. It's like, but it's cool because instead of you having to proxy that code or that data through your app, like through your app server, you know,
Yep.
if your web app is talking to storage, fetching something and pulling it back and sending it down to a user, you know, that's extra latency. And now your web server's got to make, you know, it might be streaming data out all day long.
Yeah.
So you might as well let your storage accounts do the heavy lifting for you. So
Exactly.
I think maybe what we'll do is next we add a SAS. Or next we'll add a SAS token, or maybe we do something like a canvas for pulling the bytes or something. I don't know. I wonder, have I like completely forgotten how to comment HTML? Whatever.
No, that should be the right format. I don't know if React does it differently.
Maybe that's, yeah, I'm sure that's the thing. But yeah, I think maybe next we figure out the best way to pull the either pull the bytes. Maybe I mean maybe we like base 64 them and then make a CSS background out of them. That'd be kind of neat. Out of the background out of a div.
Look at you, not a front end, Mr. Not front end designer.
or generate SAS tokens for blobs, and that way the image tag can just pull it locally.
There you go.
So cool. All right.
Keep it simple.
So I think we're gonna wrap up for the day. I gotta go eat some lunch, man. I'm hungry. I know you've got to be exhausted after being up so early. Let's figure out.
I'm going back to my bed. That's me for the day.
I don't blame you. So today's been it feels like today's lasted forever already, but I guess it is already 1 in the afternoon. So, all right. Well, let's see. Where can we? Where should we go?
I think Visual Studio is currently broadcasting, and we can go there.
All right, let's go.
Let's rate them. It's our friend Jeff.
Oh, good.
I think they have their
we'll be back
community stand-up.
We will be back on Thursday.
Sounds good.
See ya.
See ya.